They told you she was tenderness incarnate, that her love was unconditional, that her instincts were nurturing, her spirit selfless. But what if that's not her truth? Just her mask? What if what you call feminine virtue is not a gift, but a strategy? A veil woven not from empathy but necessity. Schopenhauer didn't see a goddess in the feminine. He saw an agent of the will, raw, relentless, and indifferent to moral illusion. He didn't hate her. He simply saw through her performance. Because here's the part you were never meant to hear. Nature does not care about fairness. It only cares about survival. And when survival is the only rule, everything becomes a tactic. Kindness, beauty, innocence, all carefully calibrated tools for influence, not consciously chosen. Biologically programmed. Have you ever asked why the traits most praised in women, charm, vulnerability, submissiveness, are also the traits that most effectively disarm a man? Is that a coincidence or design? Schopenhauer's answer was brutal. It is design. The female form is not a temple, it is a mechanism, a living embodiment of nature's cunning, perfected over millennia. She does not need to overpower you. She only needs you to believe she needs you. And that belief is your leash. You think you chose her, but nature chose her through you. Your desires are not your own. They are ancient impulses, the echo of a species' war cry for continuity. And while you romanticize her grace, her genes calculate your worth with cold precision, strength, status, resource, fertility window. You fell in love. She ran a survival algorithm. Still think she's the gentler sex? This is the first fracture in the mirror, the first heresy. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The question is, will you dare go further? You were taught that love is pure, that it's selfless, transcendent, the ultimate human virtue. But Schopenhauer scoffed at that fantasy. Because love, in its rawest form, is not a miracle. It is manipulation, evolution's most seductive hallucination. Ask yourself this: why does love hurt more than it heals? Why do we fall for those who confuse us, reject us, torment us, and call it passion? Why do we crave those who keep us guessing but grow bored of those who stay? Because love, as nature designed it, was never meant to make you happy. It was meant to make you obsessed. Nature doesn't care if you suffer. It only cares that you reproduce, that you submit, that you invest. Schopenhauer stripped love of its poetry. He called it a trap, one that enslaves men by inflating illusions and burying reason. And at the center of that illusion, the woman, the projection of everything he craved, but nothing she truly was. You don't fall in love with a person. You fall in love with a promise of immortality through reproduction, of purpose through protection, of legacy through offspring. But none of it is for you. It's for the species. And you are just the vessel. And what of her? She plays the role well, the blushing maiden, the grateful companion. But beneath it all lies a quiet calculation. She does not pursue love. She leverages it. She trades affection for advantage, emotion for control, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Because in a world built on dominance, her survival depended on influence, and love became her camouflage. So ask yourself, was your heartbreak a tragedy or a transaction? Because once you see love for what it truly is, the pain no longer breaks you, it awakens you. And that awakening is only beginning. She looks delicate, doesn't she? The soft voice, the hesitant eyes, the vulnerability that tugs at your instinct to protect. But what if I told you it's a performance? Not false, but strategic. Not conscious, but embedded. Schopenhauer understood that what appears as weakness can be the most potent form of power, because fragility, when wielded correctly, disarms logic. It bypasses suspicion. It bypasses defense. It doesn't need to overpower. It only needs to evoke. Why do you think men feel obligated to provide, to shield, to sacrifice? Because her fragility demands it. Not with words, not with force, but with presence, with implication, with 1,000 micro-signals that whisper, protect me, validate me, place my needs before your own. And we obey, gladly, proudly. We call it chivalry, romance, honor, but what if those ideals weren't virtues at all? Just instinctive obedience to a biological imperative. Schopenhauer saw the paradox clearly. The more helpless she appears, the more power she holds, because nothing commands behavior like perceived innocence, and nothing enslaves a man faster than his own compulsion to rescue. It's not her fault, nor is it yours. You're both enacting a play written by forces far older than language. She becomes the embodiment of need, and you become the provider of meaning. And in that dynamic, who is truly in control? Here's the uncomfortable truth. She doesn't need to dominate you. She just needs you to feel needed, because once you believe that her survival depends on you, you will surrender everything, your time, your strength, your soul, and she will call it love. But it's not love, it's the will dressed in lace and longing. So, do you still think her weakness is real, or have you started to see the mask for what it truly is? She doesn't choose like you. She doesn't love like you, because for her, love is never just emotion, it's negotiation. Schopenhauer saw it plainly. Nature wired women to be selectors, not seekers. While men compete, women evaluate. While men pursue, women calculate. And what looks like romantic hesitation is often genetic filtration. It's brutal, but it's not personal. You were never judged for your soul. You were weighed for your utility. Ever wonder why her desire ignites? The moment your value rises and withers when you falter, why she pulls away when you're uncertain, but clings tighter when others want you. Because attraction, for her, is not about sentiment. It's about status signaling. Schopenhauer wrote that woman's nature is rooted in the preservation of life. Not yours, not hers, but the will's continuation through offspring. You are not the destination. You are the means. This is why you can give her love, loyalty, protection, and still lose her to someone who offers none of it and but possesses power. Because in the silent arena of selection, security is currency, and desire follows advantage. You call it betrayal. But in her biology, it's just adaptation. Even the sweetest love story contains this shadow. The moment she met you, she began measuring, are you strong enough, stable enough, desirable enough? And if one day the balance shifts, she will not mourn. She will move. Not because she's cruel, but because her nature must. It is not love that guides her. It is survival, and survival has no conscience. So next time you ask, why wasn't I enough? Understand this. You were, until you weren't. And that realization is where your illusion begins to fracture. And your freedom begins to form. Behind her beauty, her charm, her tears, there is something older than thought, something blind, something merciless. Schopenhauer called it the will, and once you see it, you never see her the same again. The will is not romantic. It does not care if you suffer. It does not care if she loves you. It only cares that life continues at any cost. You think she chooses you with her heart, but her heart is only the mask the will wears. Behind her smile is instinct. Behind her laughter is calculation, and behind her tenderness is a primal urge to endure. Schopenhauer didn't blame her. He didn't condemn her. He simply removed the veil. And what he saw wasn't evil, it was indifference. Because the will isn't personal, it's mechanical. And she, like you, is its instrument. But here's the difference. She is closer to it, more aligned, more fluid, less conflicted. She doesn't need to question her nature, she just follows it. And that's why she often feels mysterious to men. Not because she hides truths, but because she doesn't wrestle with them. You see contradiction. She sees survival. You feel betrayal. She feels movement. You seek meaning. She seeks advantage. And this is the core tragedy. You gave her love hoping to find union. But what she gave you was selection, disguised as devotion. You gave her purpose. She gave you a role. And when that role expired, so did her affection. Not because she changed, but because her biology never made promises. You did. So when she leaves, don't ask why did she lie. Ask instead, why did I believe? Because the will never lies. It simply acts. And now, you must choose. Will you remain its slave, or will you finally look behind the curtain? They taught you that women are more moral, more empathetic, more naturally inclined to compassion. But Schopenhauer shattered that illusion with a single stroke. Morality is not instinct. It is performance, and the feminine performance has been rehearsed for centuries. Look closer. Her morality often blooms. In safe spaces, after the danger is gone, after the decision has been made. She speaks of fairness when she is protected. She cries for justice when the odds are in her favor. But when survival is on the line, morality evaporates. Schopenhauer observed a pattern. The same women who preach virtue will, without hesitation, betray it when threatened, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Because nature does not reward integrity. It rewards adaptability. You want her to be loyal, to be kind, to be good. But what if those traits aren't her truth? Just tools she learned to wield to remain desirable? Ask yourself, why is nice guy an insult, but bad boy a fantasy? Why is female desire so often entangled with power, danger, rebellion? Because the will seeks strength, not goodness. And what we call morality is often just strategy in disguise. She doesn't want your ethics, she wants your edge, the same edge that can protect her, elevate her, validate her. And once your morality makes you predictable, you become expendable. Schopenhauer didn't believe women were evil. He believed they were closer to nature. And nature is indifferent to your ideals. You call her cold when she leaves without explanation, when she thrives in your absence, when she forgets faster than you heal. But perhaps she's not cold. Perhaps she's just free from the illusions you still worship, free from the moral leash you tied to your own neck. And that is why she survives, and you suffer. But suffering is the seed of awakening. So, are you beginning to wake up? She said she would never, Eve. She swore you were different. And for a moment, maybe you believed it, but Schopenhauer warned, devotion is not loyalty. It is leverage. And in the feminine psyche, it is always conditional. Not openly, not cruelly, but subtly. Like a tide that shifts beneath your feet while you sleep. Because her devotion is tied not to who you are, but to what you provide. Emotionally, socially, biologically. And when that provision falters, so does the illusion. Ask yourself, why does her love fade in your weakness? Why does her warmth vanish when your confidence does? Because she was never drawn to you. She was drawn to what you symbolized. You were the archetype, the protector, the provider, the conqueror. And when the mask slips, when the edge dulls, she no longer sees the man, only the failure of the role. And in her world, that failure is unforgivable. Schopenhauer believed that female nature adapts without guilt because it must. Devotion in this light becomes a transaction of survival, cloaked in romantic language. She tells you she loves your soul, but it is your status, your strength, your certainty that keeps her near. When those disappear, her instincts override her memories. You ask, how could she forget what we had? But here's the cruel truth. She didn't forget. She recalculated. This is why you suffer in confusion, while she walks away in silence. Not because she's heartless, but because her compass doesn't point toward sentiment. It points toward security. Schopenhauer didn't condemn her for this. He saw it as the brutal efficiency of life itself. But he warned men, never mistake temporary devotion for eternal truth, because once you build your identity on her approval, your destruction becomes inevitable. And in that destruction, something deeper is born, not rage, not revenge, but the first breath of clarity. You were told she is the mother, the nurturer, the eternal giver. But Schopenhauer asked the question you were never meant to ask. Is maternal instinct about love or control? She cradles, she soothes, she feeds. But what if that tenderness isn't pure? What if it's a strategy of influence? Because when a child depends on you, you rule without resistance. And when a man seeks comfort from you, you rule him too, just as silently. The maternal archetype is revered because it disarms you. You lower your defenses. You regress. And in that regression, you become easier to shape, easier to guilt, easier to guide. Schopenhauer saw the maternal not as angelic, but as biologically tactical. The mother doesn't sacrifice for the child because she's holy. She does it because the child is her extension, the next piece of the will, and everything serves that continuation. Have you ever noticed how often maternal love comes with a leash? I did this for you. You owe me your success. Don't forget who gave you everything. Even in romantic love, this pattern repeats. She nurtures you until you resist. She supports you until you deviate. She loves you as long as you remain the son, not the man. Because independence threatens her grip, and where control is threatened, love becomes conditional, even weaponized. You thought you found sanctuary in her arms, but perhaps you found a cage, padded, with warmth and expectation. Schopenhauer would say, she doesn't love you for who you are. She loves the version of you that serves her narrative. And the moment you outgrow that version, the nurturing becomes noise or silence. So you must choose do. You remain the obedient son forever chasing her approval. Or do you shatter the illusion and face the world unmothered and but free? She didn't just leave, she discarded. Not with violence, not with cruelty, but with a calm, emotionless detachment that haunts you more than any scream ever could. And now every silence feels like her absence. Every doubt becomes her voice. Every moment of weakness is a replay of the day she looked at you and saw nothing. Schopenhauer would not call this heartbreak. He would call it exposure. Because rejection, especially by the feminine, doesn't just hurt. It reveals. It unmasks the part of you that still needed permission to exist. The little boy still waiting for the goddess to choose him. But here's the brutal truth. She was never rejecting you. She was rejecting the value she no longer perceived. Her instincts do not mourn potential. They calculate opportunity. And when the math no longer favors you, she vanishes. You feel discarded. But in her biology, it's simply course correction. That is the shadow Schopenhauer saw. That the pain of rejection is not proof of lost love, but proof of a false self. A self you built on her gaze, on her validation, on her choosing you. And now that she's gone, what's left? You, the raw, unmasked self, no longer flattered, no longer useful, no longer desired. And that's where the real suffering begins. But also where the awakening begins. Because rejection doesn't destroy you. It strips you. It tears away the illusion of safety, of certainty, of being good enough. And in that unbearable void is your first taste of truth. She won't come. Not because you lack worth, but because you've outlived your role in her story. Now you must write your own. You wanted her love. You got her truth. And though it broke you, though it burned through every illusion you clung to, it also freed you, because in the ashes of disappointment lies the one thing no one can manipulate: clarity. Schopenhauer knew that liberation doesn't come through love, it comes through loss. Through the collapse of fantasy, through the recognition that everything you thought was sacred was transactional, that her smile was strategy, that her comfort was compliance, that even her presence was conditional. And the condition was your usefulness. Painful? Yes. Unfair? Absolutely. But necessary? More than anything, because only in disillusionment do you finally see her nature and yours. You were not born to serve her desires. You were not born to prove your worth through her approval. You were not placed on this earth to orbit a mask woven from instincts older than morality. You were born to see, to step out of the dream, to confront the will, in her, in yourself, in the world, and say, no more. No more idealization, no more blind devotion, no more offering your soul in exchange for symbols. She may never know who you really are, because she never needed to. But now you know, and that is enough. You were chasing a goddess. Now you face a mirror, and in that reflection, stripped of fantasy, of flattery, of falsehood, you meet the only force more powerful than the will itself: awareness. This is your exit. This is your beginning. This is what it means. To wake up, you are now free.